Hello and welcome to today's training industry product demo, Personalizing Learning to Unlock Employee Excellence. I'm Liz Spate, Events Marketing Specialist here at Training Industry, and I'm thrilled to have you with us here today. Before we get started, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to use that chat window to interact with our speaker with any comments. And as for all those questions, please submit those questions to the Q&A section in your toolbar below. That just helps us make sure we get to your questions. We will address all your comments and questions during our Q&A section at the end. We would also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session on social media. So please follow @Adobe and hashtag TI webinars as you share your favorite takeaways with your colleagues. When this webinar ends, you should receive a short evaluation survey. We always welcome your feedback on things like content, speakers, topics, or anything else you would like to share with us, so be sure to complete that survey after the event. And as always, this demo will be recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us that will include the link to the on-demand program for you to share with your team. If you've attended one of our programs in the past, thank you so much for doing that. And if this is your first webinar with us, welcome. At Training Industry, we offer dozens of webinars with subjects ranging from AI to analytics to onboarding, upskilling, and reskilling. We cover about every topic relevant to leaders of training organizations around the globe. And if you want to give us any feedback personally, please do that. Scan that QR code, which you will get the deck in the follow-up email. Scan that QR code and let us know how we're doing. And with all of that information, let's get started. Let me introduce you to today's speaker, Dr. Alan Partridge. He is the Director of Evangelism at Adobe and has over 20 years of experience in e-learning, education, games, and multimedia development. He has researched and reported on authentic learning solutions for audiences around the world for the past decade. Alan is recognized for many online video tutorials like today and e-seminars, which are a mainstay for e-learning developers and trainers looking to create and deploy effective learning materials. So please give a warm welcome to Alan.
Thanks so much, Liz, and thanks to each and every one of you for joining today. It's a demo day, which is absolutely awesome. We're going to have a good time taking a look at personalization today as it relates to the use of your backend learning architecture. Specifically, we'll be using Adobe Learning Manager as an application today to share. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be fun. I will say that this one rule applies no matter what we're doing. It's always the case that the wealth of information in the room is actually coming from each and every one of you, and as much as it is from any one speaker. You guys have lots of knowledge to bring. So I hope that you'll continue to apply that chat today as we go through, and I'll try to keep an eye on it. And when you speak in the chat, just try to keep it focused on the topic of the day, which is personalization as it relates to delivering and deploying your learning and training. I'm going to cram in some kind of top level thought in the first 10 minutes just to kind of give you a sense of what personalization is all about. And then I'm going to jump right into the demo and plow through. I'll try to leave about 5 or 10 minutes at the end for questions. So without any further ado, let's move right into personalization. Now, I think it's an interesting question to sort of begin with. Where are we in terms of personalization? What's working? What's not working? So on a high level, personalization is a reference to making the content that's delivered in an online forum customized to the person who's consuming it. Now, thanks to marketing and other similar kinds of experience-driven web sites and spaces, people are very much accustomed to having personalization that does things for them. And so much so that now we can see that things related to simple recognition are kind of on the downfall in terms of emphasis or the value that they're adding to the overall personalization. While things related to easing the process or helping a person perform the work or tasks of the application online or the space online, those things are very much on the rise. That, according to Gartner's recent Maximize the Impact of Personalization. Now, when we think about that, think about it this way. That means that it's now hygiene. It's basically a requirement, an absolute expectation that you deal with who am I? You recognize the person who's actually there. You identify what's important to them, and you show them that the space, the application, the site, the materials are being customized to their expectations and needs. That's just the bar that you're already required to hit. Okay. The over on the right hand side, these elements make it easy, reassure me, teach me something new, direct me, reward me. These are the elements that more and more organizations, according to Gartner, are focused on now, saying, look, this is now the soon to be minimum standard that we need to achieve. Now, this has been true in marketing for quite some time, but it's becoming much more true in the learning domain. Think about that for a moment. If you were headed to a resort or a hotel, maybe you were going to go attend the Adobe Learning Summit 1st of October, 1st, 2nd, 3rd of October in Las Vegas this year, you would very much expect that the hotel's applications, mobile apps, websites, etc., even kiosks, would have familiarity with who you were and be able to serve your needs and be personalized to you. That's no different than what learners' expectations are. And that's in any area of learning. It doesn't matter whether that's internal employees in an onboarding or whether that's personnel who are trying to upskill and reskill themselves inside your org, or whether that's partners, maybe they're distributors, maybe they're channel, maybe they're folks who are in franchisees. They're all expecting that same kind of experience overall as part of their education and training. And it also means customers. So any customer education initiative that you're doing, they'll also have that expectation, that sort of marketing style integration of awareness and facilitation of needs, accommodation, et cetera, all based on personalization. So it's definitely a growingly critical aspect to consider. Now, one of the ways that we deal with this on the Adobe side through the Adobe Learning Manager is with something called the fluidic player. Now, the fluidic player deals with the first kind of fundamental problem that people have when they're accessing content online. It modifies everything on the back end, on the servers, so that it's all HTML5 on the front end. And that means that it can be delivered across web spaces, across applications, sort of like micro learning. You can simply pop up learning content, whether that's on a customer education site or an internal training site, whether that's on your corporate intranet or your partner or channel partners portals. It can also be in places like applications. We have one large customer that has several million truck drivers who actually use it inside the context of a mobile app. The mobile app is primarily for the functions that they do for the company otherwise related to their day-to-day work, but right inside that app, because the fluidic player is so incredibly extensible and mobile, we're able to deliver the training. The training then reports back to the LMS. So it doesn't really matter anymore whether or not people are sort of being drawn back into your learning management system. You should be able to use a system like this to deliver the content sort of headlessly or remotely and put it in anything that's HTML5 compatible. Anything compatible with a modern web browser. That includes your mobile devices, applications. It includes things like web browsers. All of those kinds of experiences are totally valid. And they should be able to get rid of all obstacles. So for example, the fluidic player translates PowerPoints, translates PDFs, translates your streaming video, Word documents, and so on, all into HTML5 content so that now it's consumable through that fluidic player on whatever device they are, wherever they happen to be, anything HTML5 compatible. So you're going to see more and more of that kind of thing. Now, we know that all of these things help to motivate learners and push them forward. They include a variety of personalization that may come in forms that are not as easily recognizable. The first one there is the learning experience platform. Now, this is basically like the experience that you get with Netflix. You're sitting at home, you're watching the Netflix, and it automatically recognizes you. It knows what your interests are. It knows what viewing habits you've had, and it makes recommendations based on your interests. It also makes recommendations based on what people like you are interested in. And it's surfacing all of those interests up using AI on the back end. A modern learning management solution should do that as well. It should deliver a kind of learning experience interface so that people get recommendations based on what their job is, what their needs are, what their skills are aligned to, what their people in their role across the organization are doing. Also based on what administrators have to say and want to press for them in their specific role. Artificial intelligence is generally used to deploy these kinds of recommendations. And we don't have to be very scared of this. This is just natural language processing. It's just making comparison of the content in the courses that are available to the kinds of skills and interests that individuals have, and then comparatively stretching that out across different factors like what do other colleagues take? What's trending? What kinds of content is aligned to skills that are important to them? What kinds of new products and services might be of interest to them based on past history? What courses did they take and how did they perform? And does the content from things that are parallel to those courses also something that they might be interested in? So all of these things are used to percolate up the most relevant information to the people who are learning. And again, that can be people who are learning in your organization, beyond your organization, customers, and so on. Now, the other aspect here is that personalization can be used for a kind of targeted marketing. Now, this can be targeted internal marketing, like marketing toward people in your organization. Maybe you're trying to get a DE&I program up and running, and it's voluntary. And so you've got this DE&I initiative, and you've sent out an email. Well, now there you sit in most organizations. You've sent the email, it had the link. You're not going to know until the day of the actual initiative how well it's performing. But if you're like me and virtually everyone else, your managers are going to want to know how that's going. Are registrations climbing? Are people going to show up? How many people will show up and so on? And they're going to want to know if there are ways that you can enhance that. Well, you can now with targeted internal marketing. So you can actually look at factors like, did they click on the email and open it? Did they respond to the email and so on? And you can use those elements plus their interest levels, etc., to send that information out to a campaign management tool like Adobe Marketo, for example, which can then run AI on it in order to drive further campaigns and further that initiative. And that can happen internally in your organization. Obviously, it can happen externally for your channel and partners, et cetera. And it can happen externally for folks like customers in a customer enablement kind of a program. So lots of opportunities there. And then the other thing to note is that personalization can be a part of the automation flow. So you can use personalization to recognize people, but you can also use it to automatically enroll people or invite people to further courses and content. So if, for example, you have big initiatives around a new product that's being delivered, maybe you want to look at a cross-reference of people who are connected who also might be interested in this new product because there are related kinds of pieces of content that they have shown an interest in. And you can use that same kind of system to automatically enroll those people rather than to sort of, ask for manual inclusion or only include people who've been invited on their own, that kind of thing. Now, we mentioned a little bit about the AI in the previous slide, just to give you kind of a sense of it. I know a lot of people get a little freaked out that they're going to have Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator chasing them when we go to AI. It's really not anything like that. Here's what it does. It takes a look at all of the industry aligned skills and the definitions of those skills and uses that language to parse it through filters of things like what are the things from the learner, like their job description, the skills they're interested in, all of that kind of stuff. The administrative influences, like what is recommended for them, what did administrators say are the skills that are most relevant to them. Content influences, like what kinds of content are actually in individual courses, learning programs, and so on. And then peer influences, the people who are around them and what their habits are. It processes all of that through an AI ML recommendation engine, in this case, Adobe Sensei, and then it delivers the recommendations that we get for people. The common personalization techniques that we see can be divided into a couple different categories. It could be organization-wide personalization, could also be individual personalization. We look at it organizational wide, we're looking at things like learner dashboards, custom names and labels for the things, the content that's inside there, and branding and culture. And you want to have as much branding available and accessible as humanly possible for your personalization to be impactful. Most modern organizations want every experience to be an experience that reflects their identity and brand. And when you're dealing with things like your organization, plus you've got partner B2B relationship organizations, then brand becomes even more important. So making a choice to do something like deliver content to partners means branding your content to be acceptable in the eyes of those downstream partners so that it looks like their content and they can deliver it in portals that make the most sense for their personnel. The same thing is true for your customer education content. You want it to absolutely carry the notes of your brand. And then finally, the individual level personalizations that we're seeing more and more of, content delivery and modality that are adjusted for the person. In other words, if you always like to do webinars, then you should get a system that preferentially sends you notification about webinars. If you always prefer videos, likewise for video streams and so on. If you have a preference order, that preference order should be honored by the system. Recommendations, we talked about personal notes, the ability to actually take your notes and have them be accessible and searchable, recognized and considered by the AI in the system for further personalization is critical. And then search results, giving you custom search results that aren't the same as you would get if you were logged in as a different user, because ultimately you're you. And so search results should consider not just what you've asked, but who you are. And that will help to ensure that you get the best results. And then finally, transcripts and dashboards, various reporting tools and mechanisms that can be catered or custom to the needs of each individual user. Now, we look at all of that in the context of, as I mentioned earlier, things like headless or native learning platforms that allow us to fully customize the appearance or the brand of whatever that delivery is. And so at Adobe, by combining Adobe Learning Manager with AEM sites, AEM sites allows us to give you tools that your web developers use to deploy your learning content anywhere. And you don't have to worry about them having deep understanding of learning management architecture, because the learning management architecture will simply be drag droppable into your existing AEM site's workflow and fit into the flow that makes sense for your org. We talked some about personalized user dashboards and notifications. This is where, when you're greeted, if your role is manager, if your role is learner, if your role is a person in sales and so on, that entire screen, the dashboard, rearranges and reconfigures itself so that it aligns to your specific needs. And in the same way, reporting is done the same way. As I mentioned before, we're able to integrate Adobe Learning Manager with Adobe Marketo Engage and automatically create a custom solution that allows you to build campaigns and things like that. You can send out automated emails, you can sync it up with Salesforce.com and all of those kind of things. It's also possible to use gamification to make your learning more personalized and more entertaining by discovering groups and deploying groups that are like, so that those groups can compete against each other in terms of the gamification solution. And that will heighten the experience when they meet face to face, as well as the experience when they meet online. Social learning is another similar space where we can get enhanced personalization. And we do that by creating discussion boards, creating custom solutions for courses, custom solutions for skill alignment, and so on, and making it possible for people to have an interactive online discussion space, but one that you can also upload your content to, whether it be videos, audio, text, and so on. And with that, we have raced ahead fast enough that we're almost on time and we're ready for the demo on personalization. Let me jump ahead and I'll double check and see if we have any questions in the pod as I'm kind of transitioning over. But I think we're in pretty good shape. Let's see. I see there are two things in the chat pod. It's folks saying hello. 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 Good. All right. So we're looking now at an out-of-the-box deployment of Adobe Learning Manager that's actually appearing inside of a a normal Google Chrome browser. It's just an everyday Google Chrome browser. Now, what's important to note about Adobe Learning Manager implementations is that while you can go with this sort of off out of the box branded experience that contains all of your ALM kind of functionality, you can also completely alter the content to fit the needs that you happen to have. So, for example, one of our customers is NVIDIA, and NVIDIA has completely rebranded the content so that their learning management system looks absolutely like NVIDIA. It doesn't look like Adobe Learning Manager or even NVIDIA with an Adobe Learning Manager skin. It is a completely unique experience that is branded and aimed absolutely at NVIDIA. And we can see this kind of thing repeated over and over with different kinds of solutions. For example, Domino's Japan. Domino's Japan uses a solution which is entirely focused on their brand, their identity, but also their region, their locality. And the localized instance is targeted specifically at the kinds of experiences that make sense for learners in their space. You'll notice the little dress up guy here. They actually use a system of gamification points to score points to earn clothes to dress up your avatar. And that sort of solution is totally possible, obviously, with Adobe Learning Manager. And it's a great way to kind of heighten the experience and grow and customize it. So really, I can't emphasize enough that you are able to make that front-facing experience absolutely anything that you want it to be. You're not restricted in any way. And so to me, it's like a new era of producing learning management applications and programs. Because, in the old days, what we would do is we would go back to the drawing board and we would get an Excel spreadsheet and we'd look at here are the 600 to 900 functions of a learning management architecture. And it became very dry very quickly. And it was very hard for people in the process to sort of recognize, oh, this is that tooling, or these are those functions that I occasionally would use to do A, B, or C. The whole thing becomes very abstracted, and you end up finding yourself comparing feature A to feature B to feature C. I encourage people to abandon that process altogether. Basically, all of the major learning management architectures are pretty close to the same thing. They basically all support most of the major architecture. So it's not about that anymore. What it's become about is you figuring out what kind of a learning program or initiative you need to launch, and then figuring out a way to do that with the existing architecture or by enhancing that architecture with some kind of solution integration. It really helps to think, okay, I need to deploy, and here are my special circumstances. And then you're going to be much more aligned in the end outcome. And systems today, especially systems like Adobe System, are able to take care of that for you. They're able to do all kinds of wild things, like things you wouldn't think. For example, Adobe System is used on ships that travel at sea. And one of the reasons is because they've managed to set up an architecture that allows for trickle and pulse. And the basic idea is when you're out to sea, you get a little trickle of network signal, but not very much at all. It's just enough to handle some minor reporting, but not enough to handle major content pushes. So pulse is when you're at port. So when you're at port, you're getting major volumes of internet signal, of ability to access the web and so on. And so what they do is they deliver the courses and content to servers that exist on the ship that are given to people on demand on the ship. And then when they need to have big update pulses, they get those when they're at shore. And having that kind of customization is not necessarily normal, but it's absolutely the kind of customizations that we see becoming more and more critical and essential to the work of doing business for various organizations in the situations that they live in. And so understanding that all of that is going to be a part of your program is how you can begin to build out these fascinating and effective initiatives that are going to be better for you. Okay, we're looking at the LXP interface. This is the out of the box LXP interface. We could be looking at the same LXP interface or different variations of it in any of the kind of deployments that you happen to do, whether they're done by your web team, whether they're done as part of an AEM sites architecture, or whether they're done just out of the box. When we see the LXP interface, you'll notice those kind of familiar elements we talked about before. Here, for example, my learning list. These are a list of courses and learning materials. Now, whenever we jump into one of these courses, we're going to see that Fluidic Player launch, and we can go into the Fluidic Player, and it launches like so. And the Fluidic Player is pretty cool because it'll allow you to change the screen size, and it'll allow you to change the presence of tools and the location of tools. And of course, as I mentioned, you can display all different kinds of content in the one Fluidic Player. So you can display things like this happens to be an interactive learning that was built in the all-new Adobe Captivate. But you also can display stuff like videos. You can display stuff like audio files, PowerPoints, PDF documents, Word documents, all of the different kinds of content that you typically would have in the context of an online learning event. Now, right now, I'm in browser mode, but my browser bar is still there. I could, for example, come down here to the bottom and expand this, and now it takes over the entire screen space, and my browser is now completely blocked out. I can hit the escape button or drop that arrow down from the top to go back into the regular display format. Now, at the bottom, you see I've got these little controls. If this was paginated, I could use these controls. I also have a secondary set of controls that are coming to me here. These are coming from Captivate that are allowing me to navigate through the content and the solutions as they exist there. On the left, I've got this table of contents that will allow me to see all the different modules that exist inside this course. And I also have notes, so my learners can take notes at any point in the overall delivery. All of this, of course, is responsive content. So depending on how wide my browser is, or whether this is a mobile browser and so on, I can display the appropriate content for whatever size content that happens to be, which makes it possible then to take it directly to things like mobile devices and all of those kind of options. When I'm done, obviously, I can just close that up and it'll drop back in and it'll report to me the information about the success of the course, whether or not it was completed, give me a timeline, all of that kind of stuff. And all of those things are basically universal. You can always jump in and take the courses in that kind of context. Now, that Fluidic Player can appear anywhere. So just because you saw it here in the context of this prefab site, you can actually have the Fluidic Player be linked from any site, anywhere. All you have to do is make a special connector on the back end, which is automatically included in the out-of-box solutions. And boom, you're able to connect across different domains, different sites, all of that kind of stuff. And it's a one and done thing. So very, very effective. You obviously can also do things like searching. The searching is incredibly sophisticated because it lets you search based on things like catalogs of courses, types of courses. It also lets you search based on duration, on the format. So the modality becomes a possibility here. And you can even do things like search based on individual skills. So this will find all of the courses that are in the system that are aligned to the specific skills that have been selected. So you can do what I call skill shopping. And there in skill shopping, you can say, okay, well, I know that I need these additional skills earned, so I can go forward with that kind of solution. Also, catalog views are available that allow you to look at the individual catalogs, and the social learning space is completely aligned as well. The social learning context for a modern LMS like this means that you can post text, you can post polls, you can post questions, you can also post things like videos, audio, and recordings. You can also upload files and contents, select them from a pre-existing gallery, all of that. And you can align those to skills again, because you want your system to be completely skill aligned. You can also use it to share content that you found online back into a social community. That social community can be aligned to a course, could be aligned to a learning program or learning path, could be aligned to a group or division, it could be aligned to a skill set, product set. All of those different kinds of approaches become possible. In terms of badges and uh, uh, the leaderboards, those aspects of gamification are also available here. Badges can be downloaded through Badger, and they also can be printed out as PDF documents. The leaderboard allows you to have, again, that recognition of personalization on the leaderboard. It identifies who the people are who are in your working group and where they are in terms of performance in the overall leaderboard. So it gives you a kind of constant metric or a measurement sense, an ability to identify who's doing well and who's struggling, and it also gives you an opportunity to communicate and compete with your peers. Now, in addition to that, it's also entirely possible and worthwhile to, I'm moving my little Zoom windows out of the way. It's also entirely possible to jump across multiple roles and understand personalization from a different perspective. So here, for example, I'm going to jump over to an administrative role. And you can see in the administrative content role, there I sit with the ability to see what other people in the overall deployment are actually doing, how they're enrolled, what their use cases are, and so on. Now, here inside the administrative tab, I'm going to come back inside here and look at a couple of things. I'm going to look at recommendations. Now, here under recommendations, I can make some custom configurations that allow me to decide if I want to make recommendations aligned to the industry skills or if I want to use custom skills. So, for example, I might want custom skills to include things like courses, learning paths, certifications, that kind of thing. And I can select fields from here that I might choose to align to for internal and separately for external personnel. All of these things will enhance the way recommendations are delivered via AI. Let's also take a pause to look at branding separately here. Now, branding can impact your personalization, as can users. The branding for the content allows us to go to the learning homepage, and there we can make a decision whether we want to use this LXP, which we call immersive style interface, and how we want to use it. And it can allow us to make choices about what kinds of components or widgets will appear. Will we include gamification, social, those kinds of pieces of content? But also, we are able to take this even a step further with the user base. So when we look at the users are divided commonly into groups. Now, the user groups can come from your HR system, so you can divide them up based on fields in your HR system, or they can be automatically created. Here we see a list of several people's direct teams. So you're looking at managers here who have teams beneath them. The system has automatically recognized those managers and their teams. But you also can set up additional active fields to control this. You can also set up custom roles that will specify their relationships. And in each of these cases, the groups can be used to target content to identify who to deliver specific individualized content to. We can do that through a couple of different channels. One of them is announcements. Now, announcements are a solution that allow us to publish content and have it appear for various people. Here, for example, I have this announcement that we saw at the beginning. Now, right now, I have this announcement like this, and I have it live, right? If I wanted to, I could choose to edit it. And then when I choose to edit it, I can choose how I'm going to deploy this announcement. In my case, I've designed this one to be a masthead. I can choose to deploy it in numerous languages. So if, for example, I need one for England and one for France and one for Germany and so on, I can do that as well. I can also choose to add an active button, a linked button that goes to a specific location. I can also align it to specific user groups. You can see right now, I've aligned this to all users, but I could align this just to a specific user group. I could say, I want Alan at Adobe's direct team to be the team which is actually seeing this particular announcement. And then in that case, I'll get it to go in that direction toward that specific team. I also have choices about when I want those announcements to appear. I can change how I want them to be withdrawn, all of that kind of stuff. So it's possible to make these customized configurations that will facilitate your smoother experience. And the reason it's possible is because you can have groups and even groups that overlap. Those groups can be external, they can also be internal. And all of these things contribute to having a more personalized experience because it recognizes who you are. It recognizes the courses and content that are best for you. All of these things happen when you log in. And login can happen based on your HR recommendations. It can happen based on your specific content that you've taken in the past. It can happen based on your alignment, your job description, all of those different kinds of factors. It's possible to customize all of those things in order to make the solution make sense for everyone as much as possible. Now, I want to hop across here just quick like and show you a little bit of how we're able to do that integration between Adobe Experience Manager sites and Adobe Learning Manager. So here we're looking at Adobe Experience Manager sites. It has actually Adobe Experience Manager at the top level. Now I want to go to sites. So I click on sites here and open up the sites component inside Adobe Experience Manager. Now, Adobe Experience Manager may not look familiar to you in the learning space, but in the delivery of web portals, in the delivery of web content, it's the #1 solution. So if you're at a large organization, it is most likely that your organization is actually using AEM and AEM sites from Adobe to deliver all of its targeted marketing kinds of content. One of the problems we all run into is when we're trying to have a solution available for people in our organization, we as educators often get pushback from marketing saying, well, your education site doesn't give me enough marketing information. It doesn't give me enough intelligence. We also get pushback from people in web deployment in IT who say, well, your learning management solution doesn't integrate with my existing architecture. This is probably that existing architecture that they're referring to. And so here you can see that ALM is able to integrate directly. In fact, down here at the bottom, you see the template that is delivered via ALM into Adobe Experience Manager sites. And that template allows them to actually have the custom content. So here, for example, I've chosen the home page. And if I choose edit here, this is what that web development team would see. They would see a custom template. They can totally start from this, or they can totally start from scratch. But what's really interesting about this is that the template is integrated with the overall learning management system. Here we see recommended based on your areas of interest. Look familiar? You're actually looking at a widget or a component, which is drawing all of the content from a deployed Adobe Learning Management solution back into AEM sites. They then have the power to make changes. So, for example, let's say I opened up the side panel, as they frequently will do, And I said, okay, show me your side panel. And then I look through here the components. This includes the sample components previously built that includes access to my learning. This is tapping the learning management architecture to bring it in. Now I just come over here, I drag it and I drop it into place. It will then drop an actual component that is live content being loaded from the learning management system. Here I click on the wrench just like they would do, and I can choose what I want. In this case, it's set to administrative recommendations. I can change it to my learning. I can change it to trending or my interests. I can change it to a catalog or a calendar widget. I can have it contain a social widget or a leaderboard. Any of those pieces of content can automatically be pulled. So I'm just going to pull it in as trending, and I'm going to set the number of rows to 1, and then I'll click the checkbox. And just that easily, they're able to pull in the trending content from their actively linked Adobe Learning Manager instance. So now instead of having a conversation with your backend IT folks who are like, I can't integrate with your system, you're having a conversation that says, not only can you integrate, but you don't have to learn how to run a learning management system, how to deal with architecture, how to deal with logins, how to deal with who gets what courses. You don't have to build any complexity. All you have to do is drop in these prefab components in order to get the content that I need deployed in the spaces and the places that I need it deployed. Let me pause there for a moment to see if we've got some early questions. I see there's a couple of things in the chat pod. Um, yeah, okay, so just questions about hopping off early, etc. And Candace is getting notes on the follow-up on the recording, so no worries there. What you're seeing here is an ability to set up everything virtually instantaneously. So in other words, when I go to a live preview of this site and this experience, it will launch Fluidic Player, same as it would if you were in an internally built system. And you get the advantage of being able to have comprehensive control over all of this and the way that it's deployed. All right. I think we have enough time to kind of sneak across and take a look at this from the perspective of authors as well. Now, another way that you can personalize and personalize heavily is to set up courses and learning paths that are of interest and of value to the people in your organization. Learning paths will allow you to drill into content in a way that's more specialized. Let's say, for example, you're in healthcare and you have some people who are nurses and some people who are doctors. You have a bunch of courses that they have in common, but you also have courses that are only for nurses and only for doctors. A learning path will let you set up a solution that can be nested, that can contain various other courses and content, and that can allow you to have a fairly sophisticated kind of approach. So here, for example, is an effective leadership one. I'm going to view this learning path from my role, and then here that'll allow me to look at the path in detail. When I look at the path in detail, I can see that I'm able to edit this. I'm able to set this up so that some courses are required. I can say that X out of Y courses are required. I can also set it up so that no courses are required. I can also set it up so it has multiple components inside of the context of one learning path. And I can even nest these so that they are interdependent. I can determine whether or not they need to be in order, taken one at a time as written, or whether they can be taken randomly. And I can duplicate the courses and content across multiple learning paths. So now I can have some courses that are just for my doctors, some just for my nurses, some for everybody. I can place them all together in a fairly complex learning path. And when I'm done, I just hit that publish or republish button. And just like that, I've created a new solution. All of these can be instanced and delivered and targeted. Like enrollments can be automated so that you determine automatically who gets what. And you can have a rule just as simple as this is the one for doctors, therefore assign all the doctors this, or this is the one for nurses, assign all the nurses this. And of course, systems like this are designed with the ability to understand who's taken what already and report that content back to you. One of the ways that that kind of custom return solution is through advanced reporting. this reporting will allow you to do it both from a managerial perspective and from an administrative perspective. So the administrative perspective allows me to go in and take a deeper dive, look at the reports on a high level, like what's going on with my currently registered users, for what period of time, what kind of people are actually visiting the site, what kind of time are they spent learning, that kind of thing. It also will allow me from an administrative perspective to study and understand what the training content itself is doing in terms of performance. How many people are taking which piece of content and how often. So I can do those sort of quarterly and annual reports, and make adjustments depending on how effective those pieces are. I can also alter any one of these so that, for example, it's dealing with all learners, or maybe it's dealing with just one specific team, configure date ranges for reports, all of that kind of stuff. But one of the more interesting options is the custom reports. So I'm going to just click like extend that so you can see a little bit more of what that kind of active trainings report looks like. The active reports, the custom reports, allow us to go in and see and create specific custom reports, that will provide us with the information that we're most interested in. So these are what we call a default dashboard. We can set these up for ourselves as administrators. We can also set them up for ourselves as managers. And each one of those can be customized and custom configured. You can see all of the data in real time. You can make adjustments to it, adjust what data you're looking at, roll over data to get more information about why it's being reported. You can create any one of these reports and add them to your own personal dashboard, and you can have multiple dashboards. And of course, you can share those dashboards across multiple use cases. So for example, if I wanted to add a report, let's do a simple one, courses enrolled and completed. I'm going to change the name here a little bit so that it's not a duplicate. And then you can say, I want this to be from this specific account. I want this to be course statistics on this axis, the y-axis, and on the secondary y-axis, I want it to be course effectiveness. I can choose what custom states I want to report on. I can choose the time span, choose the filters. Now, filters in Adobe Learning Manager can be anything. So anything that's being brought across from your learning management system is a viable filter that can be used to determine how it's done. So maybe I want the manager filter to be all users, all managers, or something like that. I lied. Maybe I want it to be dogs. I lied. Anyway, any filter that you have active in your system, you can actually pull out and use, and then you just save that, and it'll create that report for you and show you the report in real time. All right. Now, I know that I should probably pause here for Q&A. Let me jump across and see what we've got in the chat. Oh, that's a huge question, Eric. Okay. I find that companies with a learning culture embedded in the working culture to avoid separating work and learn times enjoy a better level of learner engagement. Can we integrate the learning dashboards, notifications, catalogs in MS Teams, SharePoint, or any other central work platforms? You can. So great question. The interesting aspect of integration inside of this context is that there's a separate role for integration admin. And you also have what we call granular role definition, which is just a crazy way to explain that you can create your own custom roles. But let's look at the integration admin that's an out-of-the-box feature. I'm jumping across to it, and you'll notice that it has integration with several different things and different types of things, like Adobe Commerce, like Adobe Learning Manager, FTP, and like Microsoft Teams, Marketo Engage, and so on. But one of them is Microsoft Power BI. And so in terms of data reporting, you can automatically shoot your data out to Power BI by doing a simple link. It's a one and done link. You link the two together, and then automatically your learning data will all go across to Power BI. When we start to engage with customers, we usually work with them from the onset to say, okay, what kind of reporting are you going to need? And then we work to create those dashboards with you to make sure that you're leveraging the system. But the system is connected whether those dashboards are there or not. So you can always make more. You can always work with your customer success team in order to make custom dashboards as well. Now, the system also allows you to direct link to JSON data that's coming out through the reporting API. So a lot of organizations prefer to go through a data warehouse where data is centralized and separated, and then they can do comparative analysis. Like, I want to see my sales data comparatively against my skills achievement data for my learning management system so that I can understand if there's relationships between the two that show that there's some kind of progress based on that. So that's another way that you can definitely do that. We also have customers who are using SharePoint actively. So you remember I showed you how you can take content from the courses and you can deliver or push that out. We've got integrations to do that with things like Salesforce.com, integrations to do that with remember, any website or web application that's HTML5 compatible. So in the case of SharePoint, you're able to push your courses and content out into SharePoint and have them report back in that way. Hopefully I'm hitting all of these notes as I read quickly. Buy, sell branches of their businesses, inheriting other learning platforms every time. How does what you're presenting play well with others? Plays really well with others. So, an interesting note, here we are in that path already where I showed you the, unlike most systems out there, this integration admin role is super powerful. So these are connectors that we are already supplying you out of the box for things like libraries and all of that kind of stuff. In addition to that, there's also a migration tab. Now, this one, I'm told, if you're deeply into IT or you're into migrating these systems, you're probably going to be a little thrilled. If you're not into this, I'm sorry I got into the weeds today, but I'll show you here. The migration paths allow you to create a migration project. The problem that happens when you're migrating, you've got 10, 15 systems, that problem is that you need to be able to pull from different systems at different rates of speed without interrupting the day-to-day workflow of all the people who are in the system actively working. So this allows you to set up a schedule, run that schedule, migrate not just the archival records of how people did, but also migrate the data itself. Any data that is HTML5 compatible can be shifted across from item A to item B. You map the data as you would with any such migration project, and then you pull. The system reports any errors, lets you know real time. It pulls apart across the system in shifts and keeps you up to date with how that performance is going, sends little bars across. It's an incredibly powerful solution. It's rare that this is built in such a public way. We still find that most organizations that are doing a significant migration want to hire an SI partner to at least do the initial mapping. So I would recommend that as well. I will mention another that I can't say the name, but we currently have a new customer they had 32 learning management systems. They're undergoing a collapse, so to speak, a migration currently. Within the first 6 months, we have already shifted 16 of their systems into Adobe Learning Manager, lock, stock, and barrel. So this is not unusual for us and not unusual to migrate across multiple systems. The application section is where you can build custom apps. So your developers can actually build custom apps that are leveraging the content and data from your solution in various ways. And then this piece is for online developers who do things like the website front ends. They want to customize even further. There's a detailed API reference that's built in. They can simulate the role of a learner or administrator, and they can run custom calls in exactly the same way that they would run them as a person who were running this kind of content in the live world. So when they go to run that kind of content, you see that shows them a form, gives them all the variables, lets them test any of those variables, determine what responses get out, and gives them just tremendous power to be able to explore. So for folks who are technical in the room, it's an extremely well deployed, extensible solution. Can you automate customer report to be sent to managers so they know it was completed? Level of engagement with particular, you absolutely can. Oh my goodness, I'm going to run out of time. Let me jump back to the reporting page. This is the manager one, but we're going to go to the administrative one. Okay. So when we look at reporting from the perspective of the managers or the admins, you're going to see that you have the ability, for example, to work with these kinds of report sets and data. The 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 ability that you have there includes a couple of special options. One of them is a skill status overview, where you can determine which skills you want to monitor and track. That can be set up in such a way that it's assigned or passed to the managers, specific managers. You can also set up compliance dashboards. In each case, those roles can also set up their own dashboards. So when we look at something like a compliance dashboard here, you're able to assign which elements, which courses, which content, learning paths, etc., that are related to compliance are being tracked active. And the tracking is actually showing you the tracking for that which is currently selected. So here you can see the anti-bribery course, here you can see easily find your customer and so on. And this will give you a real-time sense of what's going on there. If you drill in on any of this, you can actually see the detailed tracking information. But I'm not going to do that just yet because I also want to show you the shared with manager panel here, where you can set it up so that it can be shared with a manager in order that they get the information. You can also share any one of the reports, etc., directly on an email basis. So you can say, okay, well, when this report reaches 1 week, 1 month, etc., I want you to automatically push report copies out to the following emails. So I think that covers the lot of that question. Okay, it was a good question, by the way, a big 4-part question. And Liz says it's Q&A time. Give us your Q&A questions. What do we got, Liz?
I was about to say, I think this is a lot of great information. And if anybody else is like, where the heck do we get started? Like, how do I convince my stakeholders? How do I get the ball rolling?
Excellent question. So you can send us an email. Just go to, actually, you can even before that, you can get yourself arranged or aligned to a demo if you want to try that as well. Just go to Adobe's website and look for Adobe Learning Manager, and you'll find it. And you can either summon a salesperson by your side if you want. You can mention it here and now if you want to in the chat pod. I'm sure someone from sales is around somewhere. They'll be happy to reach out to you. You can email us at our sales email, etc. So all of those ways are great ways to do it. There's also a ton of great information online about Adobe Learning Manager. So I encourage you to investigate and check us out.
Beautiful. And Eric, I hope we answered all your questions. Those are great questions. Thank you so much. Otherwise, that was all the questions we have. So is there anything left you want
Awesome.
to leave for the audience before we say our
No,
goodbye?
I think one of the interesting things you'll find is that it's very two things at once. It's the easiest learning management system to access for users and for authors. Like authors go nuts with how easy it is to deploy their courses and content, and learners go nuts with how easy it is to consume content. It's also shockingly powerful, as I suspect that that's what Eric discovered. The back end is incredibly well integrated and allows you to do very, very sophisticated technical things and to handle real world crazy IT challenges, login challenges, etc., with sophistication and ease. So you get the kind of the power, security, etc., of Adobe, but unlike Adobe's more complicated products, this one really is easily digestible for people on the front end, which makes all the difference in the world.
Lovely. I was going to say, Eric, you came in with a question with 1 minute to spare. I don't know if this is something that can be answered quickly, but he did ask.
It is very complex with all learning management systems. There are 2 different ways to price it out. You can price it out based on individual seats, or you can also price it out based on a kind of token model, so the prices are vastly different. What I'll tell you is that most of the analysts have rated it as moderately priced. So it's somewhere in the middle of learning management systems that are out there. You will find it on the latest reports from Forrester and somebody else. I've forgotten now. But you'll find it in the latest wave and so on. And you can inquire with our sales folks, and they'll do you up a good estimate. It is one of those tools from Adobe where the price decreases the more people you have.
Love that, love that. And yes, Eric, poke away on the Adobe website to get more information for sure. But this was lovely. As I say, we have a few comments of saying found their new LMS. What a great demo. So thank you so much, Alan, for this. We love you. We love having you here.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Yes, and for everyone else who's on the call, I do invite you to join us for some up and coming training industry webinars this month. You can register for these programs and watch all training industry webinars on trainingindustry.com. These webinars are pre-qualified for a credit hour by HRCI, SHRM, ISPI, and CPTM. If you're now wondering what CPTM is, it is the Certified Professional and Training Management Program that assists you in developing core competencies that will empower you to manage the future training needs of your organization. You can participate in several of these programs held within the US or join us for a virtual practicum anywhere in the world. Find more information at trainingindustry.com/training. Additionally, join us online for September 25th through the 26th for the Training Industry Strategy Summit. This year's sessions were handpicked to tackle the challenges of building an effective learning strategy. Register now for just $99 to attend over 20 live sessions and access on-demand content. Lastly, that evaluation survey should have popped open in your tab in another browser. We would appreciate hearing your feedback from today's session. And thank you to today's speaker, Dr. Alan Partridge, and our sponsor, Adobe. And lastly, I thank you all for your time and attention today. I hope to see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.